version.
Nice.
It's bigger than banana.
Okay.
That's not it.
Oh, Tibby's getting started with opinions.
Oh.
What? How? We haven't even.
Shh.
I love Tibby. All right.
Hey, everybody. This is Chooch. Welcome to season 8 of Beyond the Wall. Tonight, we're discussing Game of Thrones as a whole, as a series, because it ended, and that's the kind of thing people do. And rather than do like a retrospective of just the last season, we're doing a retrospective of like the whole shebang. And yeah, I mentioned I'm Juche. As always, I'm joined by Christiana Ellis,
Hello.
Nutty Nookjus,
Hey, everybody.
and Viv.
Hey, y'all.
Hey. And I have well, I was gonna say Christiana mentioned that the chat's already getting a little rowdy. Which is great. I tried a few times to kind of plan out like an agenda and come up with some questions and all that. I just couldn't do it. I'm like, it's the story is so big, and we could do a bunch of pointless trivia or put you on the spot to think of a bunch of things, but that's already been done all over the place anyways. But so I just kind of wanted people to talk about their favorite things about the whole thing overall. Certainly the bulk of our show was critique, and we mentioned a few times off and on that those critiques are, taken with a grain of salt because of how much we love the world and the mythos and the characters and everything, and how well done the show was, that even though we were really harsh on it occasionally, it was still with love and mostly nitpicking, and still had it held to very high standards overall. Is there somewhere somebody wants to start?
Well, we could briefly just discuss the Balticon panel.
Yeah.
Viv and I were there and joined by Billy Flynn and the Flintstress. Did we get the audio of that and put it on the feed?
That has been
okay.
posted, yeah.
Okay, well, good. So everybody knows that already.
Right. That was such a great discussion.
So, well, I mean, I was there, so I wasn't necessarily hanging on the feed to make sure that it was, okay. But yeah, so I think in some ways that went really well, but it was kind of, it did rely on that hanging on, just like what were some things from the first season that you remember, that sort of thing. But as far as looking back on the show, I mean, I think it's interesting that the last 10 to 15 years have really started some trends in media that are these epic things. Like, for example, before the Harry Potter series, the idea that we're going to have, what was it, 8 total movies, if you don't count the Fantastic Beasts, which I don't.
Right.
That's a whole other thing. But anyway, but these 8 movies, all with the same cast of actors, where you see kids growing up over the course of the story, and this consistent vision throughout. And you get the Marvel Cinematic Universe now, and then Game of Thrones became that on a TV level. Now, obviously, there have been plenty of TV shows that went more seasons than Game of Thrones did, but Game of Thrones was both epic in its scope and in its media impact, I think, in a way that it's hard to think of another TV show that has made such a cultural impact, at least in recent years.
Yeah. No, I agree. And especially with the kids thing, thankfully Game of Thrones did not have their hands tied where they could only hire British actors. But that they were able to hire from all, but the idea that they were hiring kids and some of all of them most of them unknown, one of them not even an actor. It's a pretty big gamble because you never know, are these kids going to be able to stick it out? Are they going to be right as they grow up? Are they going to, go through puberty and suddenly no longer match your vision? Are they going to mature in their acting, or are they going to continue to sound like a child actor, And I think they did a really good job with the casting there for the kids for sure. And again, as I said, like, so Maisie Williams was not an actress. They hired her because she was a dancer, because they wanted somebody that could do the whole water dancer thing. And so they looked for a dancer, and then she learned to act. And that was a gamble that paid off. I think we
Yeah.
could all agree. She really blossomed, and she carried that character in ways that you never knew. And if I may, another gamble, not a child, but Alfie Allen really didn't have a lot before, except being known as Lily Allen's brother, who she wrote that song about sending him to rehab.
Right.
And then he turned out to be just this amazing actor, which I think is really impressive when you think about the fact that there were so many actors that they knew were going to be amazing. They hired Sean Bean, they hired Peter Dinklage, they hired Ian. How do I say his last name? Gellin? No, Aiden Gell, whatever. Littlefinger, that guy.
Oh, yeah.
That guy. I'm terrible with pronunciation. They knew they were getting Charles Dance for Tywin. They knew that they had some solid actors, but then there were other actors that it was just a 100% gamble, and it worked out really well. And many of them went on and did other things while filming Game of Thrones. They were also doing other things, like you have Emilia Clarke doing the Terminator movie, and a whole bunch of other things. I can't remember all, but they were really fantastic. You had
Alfie Allen was in John Wick.
yeah, and I can't remember her name, and I'm killing myself, but Marjorie did other things.
Yeah,
She was in Hunger Games.
Oh yeah.
been working for a long time
Yeah.
now.
Mhm.
And Sansa are again, I can't remember.
Sophie Turner.
Thank you, Sophie Turner. She is our new Dark Phoenix. I mean, it's fantastic to see all these people go on and do other things thanks to getting this start on Game of Thrones. It's really
Yeah.
wild.
And some made some poor decisions. Pompeii.
Look, everybody
the
makes
first-
bad decisions.
The first, what's his face?
Kit Harington.
Danny's the first version of her
Oh,
boyfriend.
Dario.
Oh,
Dario,
okay.
yeah. The first version of Dario went on to make a transporter movie or something that was
Look,
not
as I
well
said,
received.
everybody makes bad decisions. I just saw Wanted for the first time. James McAvoy, oof. Everybody else in that, oof.
Well, I think it's interesting just to reflect on pretty much across the board. The casting for this show was pretty great. I think, Dario is the only one that really comes to mind where they cast two different people and neither of them looked at all like they didn't look like each other, and neither looks like the description from the book. So
Yeah.
I don't care, because Dario was not ever one of my favorite characters, but I think by and large, the vast majority of the casting in the show is incredible.
Yeah.
With such a large cast, so many shoes to fill, because so many were there were no small characters. Everybody was really fleshed out.
Right.
Well, not everybody, but mostly.
Well, and one of the things, and I heard George talking about this once, about how the difficulty when you do a TV show is if a character isn't in the story, you can't. That doesn't work for TV. So in the book, some characters would be off screen for quite some time,
Mhm.
but they couldn't do that in the show. They had to write it so that those characters were always there, because if you don't give them actually time on screen, they're going to go off and find other projects.
Mhm.
They actually had to take that into account. So there was no like off screen, oh, whatever happened to this person kind of a thing, and then come
Mhm.
back with somebody, and then you'd have the same character, the same actor. So that the fact that they were able to balance that, I think, is pretty good.
Well, I think in some ways that's why the tail end of season 4 and into season 5 is where really things started to shift, because book 4 is written in a way where we're really only following half the POV characters, and we don't get the other half until book 5.
Yeah.
And so, just like what you were saying, you can't do that on a TV show. You can't just say half the cast, well, we'll see in 18 months.
Yep.
They're going to not be available in 18 months.
Yep. So just in the chat, April O'Neill says that she's watching us on her 55-inch TV, and we all come out good. I know Paulette sometimes does that as well. And April had also said, "What am I going to do without all of you?"
Oh,
Yeah.
Aw.
And
You
April
could
and
watch so many
Tibby,
levels.
yeah, so many levels. April and Tibby both agree that they always loved the dragons, and that is the one thing that the show never got wrong.
well, I maintain that shot in the finale of Danny coming out and the dragon's wings extending
Flap,
behind
flap.
her may well be my favorite shot of the whole series.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
My favorite shot is all the dragons. We all know my love for dragons, and while they did have Dothraki math throughout the series, I never really felt disappointed with the dragons. I think that what they did with them was good. Sometimes I kind of wish there was more, but CGI, whatever. So while I may have been disappointed with not seeing direwolves, I was always very happy with how they were portrayed, but also how they were used in the story. It wasn't, oh, there's dragons and now we'll cut to people.
Mhm.
And then there's dragons and now we cut to people. It actually felt like they were part of the story.
Mhm.
So I have a question.
Mm.
Could everybody list their absolute hands down favorite character storyline?
Ooh.
I had a similar thought of like who has the biggest story arc kind of thing. And favorite, yeah, it's different.
I mean, is everyone going to pick Arya?
Well, I'm trying. The thing is, I'm
What
not
if we
sure.
say so if we can just say Arya is a given.
Okay. So second favorite. What's your second favorite?
And if
everybody...
Arya's not your first favorite, then
Oh.
list who it is, and
Yeah.
that's your damn favorite, and it's not Arya, damn it.
I think my next favorite would be Brienne, and I think I might have given her the top spot if not for just some of the ways things were handled right at the end.
Yeah.
Not so much the very last episode, but the stuff with Jaime, like that whole sequence was not a fan of that, but we've talked about that. But other than ending on kind of a stumble, I think that she would be very close to Arya in terms of my favorite.
I think I love Arya's storyline. I think I'm biased because I love it even more in the books.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I can't help but loving it because Arya is Arya. And Brienne, I love that we get this story from her. I have the same complaints that Christiana does. but I'm not sure that we get enough of her to make it my favorite. You know, she wasn't there through the entire series. So if I'm going to choose someone who is there for the whole series, I'm going to choose Sansa.
Mhm.
You stole mine, hooker.
I know, but that was, you know, the funny thing is I'm like, and Viv's going to be mad because I know she's a Sansa fan. And the funny thing is, I think that for you, like you came into this absolutely loving Sansa and you were a Sansa fan before it was cool.
Hmm.
I remember talking about, you know, strong characters and you saying Sansa's a strong character and you don't have to be a fighter to be a strong character. And
Yeah.
so many people hate on her because she starts out so, you know, in her head and believing all the stories she was told. Then people get mad at her for that. But if that's all she ever knew, and she was taught that, like, how can you be mad at somebody for
Yeah.
believing everything they were taught, you
By the
know?
people they trust most in the world.
And that it what I like about her is that she in the beginning she does have that whole problem with I I need this to be real. Like this is my
Yeah.
religion. If it's not real, then what am I? Because this is all I've ever been raised to be. Arya bucked that right from the beginning, but Sansa bought into it, and it's a hard thing to be confronted with the fact that everything you were taught and what you were told you were going to be is wrong.
Hmm.
So for
Yeah.
her to come through that is to me fantastic. I disagree with a lot of the choices that the writers made, not Sansa, the writers made.
Mhm.
But I think that she yeah, I think her storyline is pretty epic.
Well, I'm going to add on to that since we're already talking about her. I think I of course agree with everything. I hesitated when you said that first because I kind of remembered not being thrilled with Sansa, but I think that was just the very beginning of season 1 before I saw what she was going to be able to really do as an actress and with the character. But I think that it's really interesting, you know, as much as I think that was one of my lowest rated episodes was the episode with Sansa's rape.
Mhm.
And I realized that it's, you know, supposed to be worse in the book and all that stuff like that. But it was hard to watch. We can all agree.
Yeah.
I think that scene though, and the need for it was pivotal as much as seeing Arya's scene where she takes her own clothes off and we see she's a developed woman with Gendry. I think it's just as important that we had a scene like that for Sansa, the way that we had it, maybe lessened a little bit, of course, but it was pivotal because it made it possible for her to break the wheel that she was expected to keep on rolling on with, and it was smaller than Dany's intention of breaking the wheel because it was solely about herself. She doesn't have to marry a lord. She doesn't have to have a bunch of babies. She doesn't have to sit behind a man. Sansa, I'm talking about. She doesn't have to sit behind anybody else and be the lady and be something that gets sold in marriage because she already did that and she's not doing it again. And she's lucky enough that the people that would have forced her into doing that again are all dead. And her brother is the king, and she knows, and she is safe enough in her little privileged world where she can rise above all of the things that her mother told her she would have to be because that's what was expected and that's what good little ladies did. Well, this little lady got to rise above all of that garbage, and she's now queen of the north for however long. But she's queen of the north, and she did that herself. And yes, there were men that helped her along the way, but it was her ass that was sold. It was her ass that was raped. It was her ass that jumped off that damn castle wall. It was her ass that rode down to King's Landing and said, I'm here to help decide what's going to happen. Like, she was really powerful, and it was in spite of and because of the men that were around her, and just knowing that she's going to be free of that system is just it's as thrill giving to me as knowing Arya's out at exploring the what's west of Westeros. Those are two things I needed after what those girls went through.
Sansa also was one of the few characters who really didn't have any stumbles towards the end. She was pretty much right on the money with every assessment she made since the end of, I mean, ever since yeah.
Since when?
Well, I was just trying to think when the reasonable point is. I really think since after the Battle of the Bastards, when they got rid of Ramsay, I think she was just nailing it every step of the way after that.
Yeah,
I mean,
the last error I remember her making was not telling John that she had the Knights of the Vale.
Yeah.
I feel like that was the last big mistake she made.
Yeah. And I think, there were certainly times since then where the show jerked us around a little bit, like making us think that there was more tension between her and Arya, like, making us think that Littlefinger's manipulations were working, for example.
Yeah.
But then again, I mean, the reveal was that no, she, I talked about this, I think, at some point, but I was reflecting during my rewatch on Littlefinger and how his crucial flaw ultimately was that he really just didn't understand what it means to have a family.
Yeah.
He really just didn't get it. And so he saw how different Sansa and Arya were, and he saw the tension between them and the conflict between them and how they would argue and say, aha, there's my chance. Just really not understanding, oh, no, they're sisters. And yeah, maybe sometimes they will argue or fight, but that does not mean that they trust you more than each other.
Right.
Yeah. But in any event, so Sansa really got to finish strong compared to a lot of the other arcs. And, in the chat, April has mentions Jaime because they took a character that everyone hated, and rightly so, and turned him around in the fans' eyes. He did, however, have a lame ending. And I actually want to comment on that a little bit because both, Viv and I talked about our unhappiness with how they left, the parting of Jaime and Brienne. And I really blame the writers for that because I would have loved it so much more. First of all, I think him choosing to go back to Cersei makes perfect sense to me. Yeah. But I would have loved it if maybe he is on the verge of sleeping with Brienne instead and realizes before he does it, I can't. I'm sorry. I wish I could be what you want, but I have to go back. And does it then instead of, oh, let's take your virginity and then try to duck out in the middle of the night.
Yeah.
And leave you sobbing. It's like, that's not cool. So they could have made it the tragic star-crossed romance that, no, his heart is torn asunder because he loves two women. It could have been this cool, like, romantic melodrama, and instead they turned it shitty.
Yeah. They could have also made it that they could have still had him sleep with her the one night and have it be that, and not have it be like they could still have a heartbreak. It was
2 nights.
Well,
because like they were totally planning a life together. I mean, everybody went back to King's Landing and he was like, no, I need to stay with Brienne. She's my guiding compass, blah, blah, and there was so much in the fact that he was staying with Brienne that made all of that just
I think the idea that having them actually sleep together even once is the step too far. I don't think they could have made that work either way because it's so clearly calculated.
Oh yeah.
To make us sad for Brienne and mad at Jaime. And and that's, you saw so much of the audience like, well, maybe he's actually going down to kill Cersei. And it's like, no, I don't think so. And so I agree. It was just that piece of it was not good. And it was just unnecessary.
Yeah.
It didn't affect the outcome at all.
And April echoes exactly what we were saying in the last half of the series, the season. Poor writing.
But with that bump, like if I can sort of use the Men in Black flashy thing on myself and imagine that what actually happened is he kissed her once and then said, no, I cannot. I must return to my sister and our doomed love. and that whole thing, and then he left and went back to Cersei. Even just that change for me fixes Jaime's story for me. Because honestly, I think him going back to Cersei makes sense. They were always two halves of a whole, even when they hated each other. And I think it makes sense for them to finish together. And my only other real quarrel with the very end for the two of them is just that down in the tombs with rocks falling on their head, where later it seems like, oh, they would have been fine if they just stood on the other side of the room. Like, that just seems like such a bizarre non-visual choice.
No, I do want to find out what Chooch's favorite is, but I do want to say something that what Christiana said, because I don't think it's likely that Tyrion was the first person down there. I think that room behind him was cleared because the soldiers and the workers had cleared that area looking for people. That's my thought. I don't think he just happened to wander down there, move 2 rocks, and find his brother and sister.
Yeah.
Okay, but when would that have ever happened? This was them going in for the first time into the city. I'm
just saying, I don't think it happened that way. I think that we are left to guess, like we are with so many other things, but I don't think Tyrion dug them out. That is not, no. He would have sent other people in.
I know
it's a nitpick. It's a nitpick of a nitpick. I know.
Too often do we have to figure things out, right?
Yeah.
And again, poor writing. April says,
wait. I'm still waiting to hear what Chooch's favorite storyline is.
Well, before we get there, this is just one last on top of that. Can we use the Men in Black flashy thing for the Harry Potter epilogue?
I'll second that.
Yeah.
And I'm fine with it. Fine with it.
What is your favorite?
Good point. So Arya is probably favorite and closely followed by Sansa. I agree with those completely. And I was thinking of everybody else, anybody but Jon comes to mind. But I don't know. It's just so boring. Through and through.
I was so happy.
Let him finish.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought he was
anybody but Jon. I'm sorry. I was being melodramatic with the way I said it, but I just want to hear him finish.
My other favorite is probably be Sandor, and it's another where he comes similar to Jaime, where he comes full circle with his brother, and certainly parts of it are contrived and all that, but for somebody who could have been much more of a side character, could have been much more of a two-dimensional character, that I love how we got to learn so much more about him and kind of his relationship with Arya, his relationship with different people. And then the ending that was pretty much inevitable and satisfying.
Yeah. That was one of the things that we asked for the whole series, was the Clegane Ball.
Yeah. I love Sandor. I absolutely love Sandor, and I loved Sandor before I even read the books, because my brother was playing him in a D&D game that I was in. And I started reading the books, and he's like, so I haven't spoiled you on anything, but yeah, he's totally in the books. And I was like, oh my God. So when I met him, I was so excited. And I think that Rory McCann did such a good job portraying the pain that Sandor has. Like, and there's just in a show where everybody seems to be about fucking and killing and all of these things, he is just, nope, I kill people, I have a code, but you can't really see it, and I'm gonna call everyone a cunt. And there's something
chicken.
Yes, exactly. I'm gonna eat this chicken.
Jenkins.
But there's something about him that is so fascinating, because he was loyal to a fault until, oh crap, fire.
Yeah.
And then at the end, it's, oh crap, fire. Yeah, but your girl needs your help. And then he goes in, and it's just like, I'm right there with you, Chooch. Sandor is amazing.
Yeah.
I agree. I also think that it's so important to Arya's story to have the two of them sort of really reach their respective story climaxes with each other.
Mhm.
Because I know Tibby in the chat had said that he was Tibby was unhappy with the
Arya's list.
Arya's list, getting cheated out of completing her list, and suggesting that her story was messed up at the end. I disagree, and the reason for that is that I think it was very important, albeit occasionally clumsy. It was very important for her to choose life.
Mm.
And in order to make that choice apparent and important, it needed to be contrasted with Sandor, who was able to tell her with personal knowledge, this path of vengeance ends with death. And you don't have to do that. You can choose to live instead.
Yep.
And you don't have to worry that you're letting anybody down. It's not failing, it's choosing life. And Sandor is saying, it's too late for me. I don't feel like I can make a different choice, but it doesn't have to be too late for you. And so her making the choice, even as far as she's come, to say, I don't have to run into that burning, crumbling palace to look for someone who's probably going to die anyway. I can live instead. And
Yep.
I thought that was great.
Yeah.
I agree. I also really love how there's like this mirror of Sandor and Brienne, and both of them, the really important parts, the really important influences for them are Arya and Sansa. And it's mirrored, like it's mirrored which one is which. Like Brienne starts going, with Arya, and then Sansa becomes her main, and with Sandor it starts with Sansa, and then Arya becomes his main influence.
Yeah.
I just imagined a set of bookends where one side is Brienne and one side is Sandor, and each one has a spot where an Arya figure and a Sansa figure can go in either one.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. One other thing I did want to say about Sansa that I forgot to mention, and it's mentioned in the books from Kat's perspective, about how Sansa is more like her than any of her other children. And when we see Sansa at the end of this series and we see her really come into her own, that is Kat. She has all the strength of Kat. And minus the distraction of a man. Which I love. And much like, she starts out thinking her goal in this world is to marry somebody important, and she realizes, no, my goal in this world is to be someone important.
Yeah.
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 And I just think that is fantastic. So, and Tibby had also said that Arya was her favorite until the end, and then, well, everybody kind of messed up at the end. Most of them, but
Arya was perfect. I will say though, Nettie, you said that the thing that happened to Kat was that she had a man, and I don't think that's true. I think the right man, I think Eddard would have made her a very powerful and strong and courageous woman. I think that having Jon Snow showing up as the illegitimate child of Eddard just
that was the foil.
Well, hold on, let me
yeah, sorry.
I think that squashed her in a way that Cersei was squashed by Robert with all of his affairs.
Yep.
So I think that both women, I think Cersei and Kat were almost like black and white opposites of what happens when your husband betrays you and you're not in a place where you can hide it. Like Cersei was the head of state, so to speak, and Kat was the head of the House of Stark. And both of them were just utterly demeaned and embarrassed in a world where their entire identity was wrapped up in being that figurehead and being the mother. And then they're being cheated on. And then there's the illegitimate evidence of that.
Yeah.
And I think when your whole world, you have been trained into this yoke of a life where you're just going to be a broodmare for the
Yeah.
family line, that really is like one of the few things that you have. And then here's this other chick that's making babies too with your man. So it's like, I think it crushed them in different ways.
Mhm.
Kat didn't give up on Ned. Cersei obviously did. And
Cersei went out of her way to make and I liked it. The show added something that the books didn't have. The show added, and it was a really great scene in season 1 where Cersei comes to Kat to talk to her about Bran and tells her this story of losing her first child.
Mhm.
And that was a child of Robert's. And there's the clue about the head of black hair and all of this
Yeah.
other stuff. And now the second part of this is in the books. She very carefully made sure that she never had a child from Robert again. She would never give that to him again.
Mhm.
And that was her reaction to his betrayals.
mhm.
And whereas Kat was, I'm going to be the perfect lady. I am going to stand by your side. I just can't love your child.
Yeah.
Mhm. I'll be the minor voice of dissent in the sense that Kat had many positive qualities, but I never loved her.
Yeah. Well, I love Sansa though.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
agree. And so like that, I had a little bit of a reaction when you said Sansa became like Kat, and I was sort of feeling like I'm not sure I agree. I think she took on some of Kat's qualities, but really surpassed her, transcended her, I think.
Yeah.
Because Kat had a strength to her, but she also had a tendency to lash out irrationally and make bad decisions out of just emotion. Now, that's not to say that the emotion she was feeling wasn't completely legitimate and born out of true wrongs done to her.
It was justified.
But just think of all the trouble that was caused because she just couldn't let Tyrion go at the end of the crossroads. Like, she, on relatively little evidence, taking the word of her childhood friend, who she knew to be kind of a weasel, that, oh yeah, Tyrion's dagger. And just trusting, like, oh, well, her initial dislike of the Lannisters is just proof. So therefore, she's sure he did it. She's going to kidnap the brother of the queen, all on her own volition, with just the people who happened to be there at the inn with her. It caused a lot of problems.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like, I understand what her reasoning was, but it was not well thought out ultimately.
Well, and there's a couple of points that it's like, if this just happened, everything would be different. Wait, didn't we do a Balticon panel like that?
I think we did. Yeah. Not this past one, but the one before, I think, was What Ifs.
Which was actually 2 years ago.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of chat going on about how John was useless. It was sad. John was white bread. John was there for a cute ass. I will give us one. Well, John had a couple of interesting points. I do think John is more interesting in the books, but in the show, John, if it weren't for John, we wouldn't have some of the best characters. We wouldn't have had Ygritte. We wouldn't have had Tormund. We wouldn't have had Samwell. We wouldn't have had anything up there. And it was John that made these friendships.
Yeah.
What I think is really funny is when reading the books, you get this feeling that, John, there's this whole, he was tempted by the wildlings and he fell in love with the wildlings and can we actually trust him and blah blah, and where are his loyalties and everything. And in the books, it's John was first his eye was first turned by Ygritte, but what he really fell in love with was Mance Rayder.
Hmm.
And in the show, his eye was turned by Ygritte, but what he really fell in love with was Tormund. Their Mance Rayder was awful.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So poorly done, in my opinion. But I love that show Tormund is even more extra than book Tormund, and that made me super happy. I was discussing with Tech that what they should have done with Mance Rayder is that would have been a perfect cameo. And had they known what they were going to do in this season with the whole thing about stories and songs being important, they would have emphasized the fact that Mance was a bard. And that was his big deal. And that's how he became King in the North, King Beyond the Wall. If they had cast like a musician, like Sting or Bono or Bon Jovi or anyone like that, Harry Connick Jr., any musician that we all know and love that can also act and who's totally charismatic. But I don't know if Sting can act, but could you imagine Mance Rayder being Sting?
Sting can act.
So,
all right. I've only seen him in Zoolander, so.
You have not seen him act then.
No.
Check out Dune, baby girl.
Okay. Oh, right.
Yeah.
Sting can act. Okay. It's Sting.
If you call it what he did in Dune acting, he was in it. He did wear costumes.
You always have to consider the fact that they are directed a certain way.
Yeah. Well, on that note, though, I think that the actor that they did cast as Mance Rayder is a good actor. He has been great in lots of things.
Yes.
But they just didn't give him anything interesting to do. And I think ultimately, like, I didn't turn on John, honestly, until after he was brought back from the dead.
Yeah.
I was engaged in all his storylines up until then, but then I kind of just, like, the moment he decided, oh, well, I died and came back, and therefore my vow is like moot, void, or whatever. Yeah. Like I did not feel that. Even if that is what John does in the books, maybe it is, but when it happened in the show, I didn't feel it. It felt like they just want him to go south and they had to come up with the reason. And like, I get like the rationale of it, but like, it didn't feel right to me.
I could have seen it working totally better had the men in the Night's Watch said, no, dude, your watch has ended. You died. Like, we're still your allies, but you can go.
Yeah.
Well, or how about this? They're telling him you're not welcome.
Yeah. You're an other. Mm-hmm. We are sworn to protect against the Walking Dead.
Yeah.
I mean,
I did not trust him coming back.
I do agree. I think in hindsight, the way that we saw season 8 play out, I think that it is possible that they were just sloppy and finding a way to get him south. But that said, we've had some time to catch our breath since the season ended and since the series ended. And I honestly don't really have a problem with John's arc. And I think partly because we loved Aemon so much. And that was kind of Aemon's arc almost, right? I mean, I didn't read the Dunk and Egg stories and all of that stuff like that yet, but I know I've been saying for 1,000 years I would. But like, I feel like his story arc was like, he was born a bastard. And if we're going to talk about the life that Arya and Sansa were raised to have, like, this will be your life. John's life, it seems like what we pick up is pretty much set. You're going to be a brother at the wall. Like, this is your life. You're a bastard. That's the best you can ever hope for. And while Ned did that to protect him, it also kind of took away any other real options for him to consider a life with a family and children and all of these things, other than the idea of, I'm never going to make a bastard in this world. You know, I'm never going to marry and do that to a family, because he, even on some level, I think all of the kids held some level of disrespect for the fact that while they loved John, his brothers and sisters, cousins, right. that
but
they
you know
loved
what?
him, but that there was a little bit of diminishment of the honor that their father preached about so much to them. It's kind of like, oh yeah, Dad, but then you cheated on Mom.
Mhm.
And I think that he could have also led a different life if he hadn't been raised as a bastard by a woman that hated the sight of him.
Yeah. Yeah. But the fact that he came out so good considering the way Kat raised him is impressive. I will say, by the way, while biologically cousins, they're his brothers and sisters.
I totally agree.
Yeah.
Well, so
And I
I
also
just knew
think
someone would
that
correct me if I didn't
Yeah.
say cousins.
I also think that that may be true, except for Arya. I think for
Mm.
Arya, John was the biggest and closest sibling she had, and
Mhm.
she never saw anything.
Well, and I'll say
Whereas
Rob loved John like a true
Rob
brother as
loved
well.
John,
Yeah.
but
He
he knew,
absolutely loved him.
but Rob understood the difference, and
True.
he understood that John can never be, and this is in the books and they skipped it in the show, until he decides to legitimize John and make him the heir. Because in the books, that's what the only you just have to be lord of a house to legitimize a bastard. And that's what he did. And it's like in the show, he never did it. And it drove me crazy. It was when they got word that they thought that Bran and Rickon were dead. And he said, well, rather than have people, fight over my sisters and put them in more peril, I'm making Rob my heir.
Well, wasn't the problem though that he had already sworn to the Night's Watch at that point, and that was,
There was a bit of an issue there, but
Yeah.
he was king in the north, so he could a king can
well,
yeah.
but the concern at that point was whether John would accept it, because
Yeah.
But I was so happy that John's arc ended the way it did, partly just because I'd been unhappy with all of the show's protestations that we should believe in him as the one true king who's going to save everybody, because I just didn't ever feel that in my heart. So I was glad that didn't happen. And in some respects, if this show kind of grew in popularity as something that was taking these classic fantasy tropes and subverting them, John is the final example of that,
Mhm.
where it turns out he is the chosen one. And yet, what's the end of his story? It's Willy Wonka saying, "You get nothing."
Yeah.
Didn't want it.
And it's not that
Yeah,
I'm
he didn't want it.
Yeah. Well, and it's not that I'm like happy for his misfortune in a Schadenfreude way, as much as I didn't ever feel like he was actually the right guy to do all of that. And so it's a matter of saying, turns out being the chosen one is not great, because if you can't actually seal the deal, nobody wants you around.
Yep.
Because you make things complicated.
Yep. And as much as I what the foogled about Bran being king, that's actually to me more satisfying than the idea of John being king or Dany being queen.
Agreed.
It to me, I wouldn't feel satisfied if that was the end. So Tibby says, I wish Ned had let his wife in on the secret. Maybe John would have been raised with more love and she wouldn't have spent her life feeling betrayed. Too bad he didn't trust her more. I think also, as much as Kat was devoted to Ned, there's only so far that relationship can go with that big of a secret. If you can't be open with your partner, there's a wall between you. And so that there was always a wall between him and Kat.
Well,
yeah,
but
I think that's one of the things that broke her.
Yeah.
Well, sure. I agree, but I think that it's not a matter of he didn't trust her enough. No. It's Ned's flaw is that he is honest and honorable to a fault, like to the point where it is an active detriment to everything he cares about. And it's kind of just it's cruel irony that the one time he ever goes back on that, he ends up getting his head chopped off for it. So, but
Yep.
I think that we have to remember the timeline of events, though, because remember, he went off to war, or rather, like the war it happened because his father and brother, who was Kat's first husband or betrothed, got killed. So he only married Kat because of that.
Yeah.
And didn't really know her that well necessarily, and then immediately went off to war. And so when he's coming back with this deathbed vow he made to his sister, and a wife that he hardly knows and just fought a war, and maybe it's better to not say, by the way, there's a Targaryen heir in my basket. It's and so I
And
can
then at
understand.
what point do you come clean?
Right. And I think it's really just, it's him being, he takes that vow to the grave because he's dense that way.
Yeah.
But then again, it's also kind of like what Danny says towards the end here is either it's a total secret or everybody will know.
Yep. So, I wanted to go over our predictions for the end of the series, if anyone was interested in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because I think that's fun. So we only got one listener send in theirs. So I'm going to start with that. Mike McCauley said, pregnant Danny and John will end up ruling in the end, but King's Landing will end up decimated and the throne will be established in another town. The idea that Cersei destroys both King's Landing on her way down seems believable to me, plus fulfills the vision of the... Hang on, I got to scroll. Vision of the throne being among ashes. So we know how that went. So Chooch said he expected John and Danny to sit on the throne. They came close. Tyrion's going to die. And Sam Tarley sitting down to write a song of ice and fire.
Thank God Thank God you were wrong about that one.
Viv said Danny. Oh, geez, hang on, because Viv had a lot of things. Danny, no king. She is solo. Theon is going to die. Yep. Oh, geez, hang on. Sorry. White Walkers coming back, or the next generation, a pregnant belly, or something showing that there's another chapter, but one that won't be filmed, or Arya marrying Gendry with Hot Pie making the cake, and all sorts of mush. And then Christiana.
I'm a fan of mush.
Yeah. Christiana says Cersei will destroy the throne and there will be no throne. I don't think any of us predicted that Drogon would be the one destroying the throne.
In hindsight, I feel like there were more clues than we realized, but
yeah. But I don't think any of us would have gotten there. That's kind of a leap. And
we did have a pregnant belly though. Gilly's pregnant.
Yeah.
Well, also when I made those predictions, I was still very much in the camp of Cersei was faking her pregnancy, which I guess was not what was happening, which is, I think that was a failing of Cersei's final arc. There was no reason to make her actually pregnant. I don't feel like that produced anything interesting.
It just felt like Dorne to me. It was, we're going to sprinkle in some plot point. Oh, never mind. It's not important.
Yeah. One of my predictions was that her pregnancy would be irrelevant either way. So why ever bother?
I know. It's so frustrating. It's like when you've chosen to only do 6 episodes, why are you sprinkling these things in? So Christiana said Arya and Gendry will be standing on some wall somewhere, realizing that now is the time to pick up the pieces and start again. And then I said, no throne, anarchy in Westeros, no more kings or queens, break the wheel. I was very wrong. I really wanted that. Sam thought of it.
Yeah.
And I said, new beginnings, there are no rules. We make our own rules. We get to decide what happens next. We will make the world a better place.
Kind of.
A little.
Kind
a
of.
little. They're leaning towards
Or
like
possibly succumb to an evil overlord
yeah.
The 1%ers are in charge, so it's
that's
going to
been
be bumpy.
lurking.
But
Yeah.
They are leaning yeah, I don't know.
Well,
I like
it's
that
the
theory that
the 1%ers instead of the 0.1%ers, I
Yeah.
suppose.
yeah. So those were our predictions, and I think it's interesting also to see like what we were thinking at the beginning of the season and what
Mhm.
actually happened.
Yeah.
I'm glad that none of us were right. Like none of
Mm.
us really knew what was going to happen. I think had we predicted something and that's exactly what would have happened, I know Christiana said this quite a bit, it would be disappointing.
Yeah.
yes, I agree.
Yeah.
That's why we pay them to write this shit.
Yeah. So in the chat, Tibby says, back to the Jon Snow thing, yet Jon was also Ned's sister's child. I think that Kat would have loved Jon for being the sister's child and would have protected him. But then Game of Thrones was so much about the bad choices people make.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, the point was not what would Kat say if she knew the truth. The point
Yeah.
was, freshly back from the war, what would Ned choose to do, having just made a deathbed vow to his sister never
Freshly-
to tell anyone?
Totally freshly back from the war, but I
Yeah.
mean, Jon
didn't even
wasn't a
know
year
him.
old when he went to the wall. Jon was a man when he went to the wall. So I'm just saying a lot happens.
Well,
Like
I'm
you
agreeing.
see, yeah, you know.
I'm agreeing it was a bad decision. I'm just saying it wasn't about him not trusting her. It was about him thinking that keeping his promise is more important than anything else.
I do like the idea that,
Mhm.
Game of Thrones is about the bad decisions we make,
Mhm.
or the bad choices people make. And Tibby also says, I think Cersei thinking that she was pregnant was part of her depression at that point, losing all her children and Jaime and all the other stuff happening.
I think
Yeah.
it was sloppy writing. They wanted if the answer was yes, she's pregnant, then they should have just freaking confirmed that early on instead of trying to make it sort of mysterious and
Yeah.
then never quite confirming it, but just having everybody act as though it's true and then have her reveal 100% that it's definitely true right at the end, just so she can have rocks fall on her head.
Yeah.
All right.
So-
okay.
So throughout this conversation that we've been having, I keep having that one meme, that graphic puppet in my head of one of the
horse?
creators. No,
Oh,
of one
okay,
of
go
the
ahead.
creators saying, "We kind of forgot." ... Like it seems like that happens so often, and like
Yeah.
this is another one of those times where I'm thinking we kind of forgot, that we set all this up and we don't care about it anymore. So you shouldn't either.
Yeah. I keep thinking of there's the drawing of the horse, and season 1
Mhm.
through 4 it's very, very detailed, and season 5 half of the season it's detailed and then it gets more line
Oh,
drawing.
that.
Yeah.
And in season 6 it's like line drawing, and then the very back end it's a photo, and season 7 and 8 and it's stick figure.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
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 I think the only reason they decided to have Cersei be pregnant is because they were thinking, we need to have Tyrion believe her. And what other possible reason could he ever have to
Yeah.
believe a single word she says? And to say she did always love her children. She has a baby. Maybe that's something for her to live for. Maybe she will cooperate. So I think that is literally the only reason they introduced that plot point, is to try to justify that, because they really seemed utterly uninterested in exploring it in any other way. Jaime didn't
Yeah.
care. There was some potentially interesting stuff with the idea that the timing of it, that if it's Jaime's baby, but then Euron is made to think that it's going to be his, that is something where he could have learned that it's not his, and that could have been interesting, except at that point they didn't have anything interesting to do with Euron either, so it was just kind of, they didn't have anything else to do with that plot point, and yet they felt like they couldn't just ignore it, and so it just felt awkward for every beat afterwards.
And again, that's speculation on our part,
Yeah, it's good for a
because we
little
don't
emotional twist at
actually
the
know
end.
what they're thinking.
What, Chooch?
It's good for a little emotional twist at the end.
Yeah.
That's a cheap
So
trick.
did anyone watch the documentary?
I
Yes.
meant to and then didn't. I forgot.
I
Yeah.
planned to, and every time I sat down to watch it, I said, ugh, I don't want to.
Hmm.
I feel like I should have wanted to, but I didn't want to hear the writers talk about how great they are when I was not thinking that.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean,
That pretty much doesn't exist. It's a straightforward behind the scenes,
yeah,
Oh,
and
okay.
they are barely present.
Oh, well,
Yeah.
that's good. Maybe
yeah.
I'll
It's
watch
this.
it.
It's the casting. It's the costume. It's this. It's
Extras.
really. I mean, it's. I kind of. I was dragging my feet. We talked about it a long time. We put it off and put it off and put it off, and I think we were both kind of like. I mean, I've got a little bit of fatigue for the world right now.
Hmm.
So going into that, and like, you were saying, I didn't want to hear them congratulating themselves when we had all been disappointed, but it really was the cast and the crew and the making of, and they started at the beginning of the season with, they show a clip of the very first line read through that they'd ever done, and all the little baby faces and all the grown-ups
Aw.
with their baby faces and then compared it to like this season's, and it was just like it was really something to see, not just because the table was far larger to accommodate the larger cast, but there was just like this, you really did get a sense that these were people that whether they truly liked each other or not, they saw each other as family, and they knew that they were going to be sitting at that table again. You know what I mean? And so it was like this really neat bond across everybody. And the last table read that they did, I'd seen some different footage from, but it's just really neat to see, like, when somebody reads the lines and their character dies, you see the people next to them reach over and touch them. Like, it's so sweet. Like, there's a lot of really sweet moments in it. There's a lot of moments where I think Chooch and I launched discussions of, well, God, they spent all that money there, and they could have, so it kind of opened them up to be more criticized from me anyways, on things that I think that they dropped the ball on or didn't focus enough on, or directions I think they focused too much on. But I think overall it was nice. It wasn't like, oh my God, you have to see it, but it was good. I mean, it fills in a lot of blanks. It does, since we all basically kind of need a primer this season on what the F we just saw and what happened off screen. I think it fills in some gaps for me there too as well. So plus it's just always neat for me now. I think it's funny because I listened to episode 0 of our season 1, the very first episode we recorded.
Wow.
Yeah, and PG was there, but Christiana wasn't.
Yeah.
It was weird. I was like, where's Christiana? Oh yeah.
Yeah, well, because I knew you guys had talked about how, we just did this episode 0. We're going to do Game of Thrones podcast. And I was like,
yeah. It's a good thing we planned on inviting you, because that could have been really awkward.
I don't remember you not being there.
Yeah. It was
First couple.
Yeah, I think I joined pretty early on. I
Yeah, it
can't
was
remember
like episode
exactly.
2.
Yeah.
Yeah.
My whole origin story has changed. I didn't even remember that. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. That's cool. That's really cool. I'm now going to watch the before my Crave subscription runs out. I will watch that documentary because I really, like I said, I was dreading it, and now that you've told me what it was,
Yeah.
I'm more interested in watching that. One of the things that I do like is the relationships for I'm normally not interested in celebrity lives, but the relationships that were formed on Game of Thrones. Kit Harington met his wife. I can't remember the actress's name. I'm sorry. She played Ygritte.
Rose Leslie.
Rose Leslie. There we go. I knew that. I just couldn't remember it.
Sure.
And everyone's favorite pairing, I think, would be Maisie Williams and Sophie Turner. They became absolute best friends, and that's adorable. But there are so many other relationships that you see, Rory McCain and I can't pronounce Christian something Icelandic for Tormund.
Oh yeah.
They became good friends, and even Tormund in the Mountain, which is like, wait, you never even filmed together, but all of these really neat relationships, and the guy that plays Gendry and Arya, if you see when they start out, he's like an adult and she's a kid, and they kind of poke fun at each other, and she has a crush on him, and then when they finish, they're more equals because they're both adults and all of that. Which, by the way, filming that last scene must have been really weird for him.
Uh, I hope you guys will perhaps indulge me in a brief non-Game of Thrones tangent.
Go ahead.
I've been in my 5 more minutes. I've been doing a rewatch of Gravity Falls,
Oh, I love that show.
and one of the arcs through running the whole kind of series, especially in season 1, is that Dipper, this I think they're 12. He's a 12-year-old boy, and he has a crush on Wendy, who's probably 17.
Mm-hmm.
And he has a serious crush on her, and eventually, like, it's kind of revealed, like, he keeps wanting to tell her and not kind of chickening out, and then eventually it comes out and he's really embarrassed, and she's basically does the best possible way of saying, please don't be embarrassed, because I want to still be your friend, but this is just, it's not going to happen. Because it's like, we're just not we're not at the same stage here, and you're going to be great someday.
Yeah.
This is just not what it's going to be, but I do still want to be friends. And then it's a whole sort of thing. But there is a season 2 episode, and I just reviewed this one, but didn't mention this, and I'm regretting it now. But there's a bit where Dipper has time traveled back in time 10 years.
Mhm.
And he briefly encounters 7-year-old Wendy, who whispers and giggles that she thinks he's cute. And as young Wendy leaves, Dipper's Mabel is laughing at him and about, it's like, isn't it funny that she thinks you're cute now? And he's like, yeah, but she's like a little kid. It's weird. And she goes, that's probably how she felt. And he's like, oh, yeah. So sorry, it's a total tangent there, but just the idea of the age difference and what it takes sometimes to realize what that actually is.
That's
Anyway.
fantastic. I love it, because one of the things that always bugged me on, again, not Game of Thrones, about comics was the whole like Peter Rasputin, Kitty Pryde weirdness thing, or any Captain Marvel Shazam thing, because it's like yeah, he's a kid, but yeah, there was always that. No, I think that's hysterical. So I have, if I can find it, here we go. I have all of our scores.
Mhm.
What does everyone think our top rated season was?
I
Now,
think
we only
season
have
1.
season 2 through 8. We
Oh,
did not
well,
rank
shit.
them
Okay.
in season 1.
I'm gonna say season 4.
Okay.
Season 4, I think,
Yeah.
did have the one really low one though. So
My guess was 3 or 4, so I'm going to say
Yeah.
3.
yeah, I'll stick with my guess, even though I'm rethinking it now.
Viv?
What season had... So the rape was in season 5?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And the purple wedding was season 4 then, right?
The purple wedding, which one? I'm trying.
Joffrey.
Oh yeah,
Joffrey, yeah.
yeah. That was at the early in season 4.
I think season 4 probably.
So you're close, but it's actually season 7.
Really?
Wow.
Yeah. So season 4 got an 8.9, and season 2 got an 8.9. So they're both our second highest rated seasons. But season 7 got a 9. A solid
Wow.
9. Yeah.
I think I know why, and I think it's because season 7 was where they were getting through all of the crowd pleasing bits before they had to really start getting everything moved into place for the last season.
Well, I'll tell you, in season 7, the lowest we rated something collectively was an 8.1.
Was that the season where I was giving higher than 100% though?
I don't count anything higher than 100.
Damn it, Nettie.
Sorry.
Curses.
Yes.
No, but that's good
I
in this
don't believe I count higher than 100.
in this situation.
Oh wait,
that's
I lied. I'm
fine.
sorry. Both you and Chooch gave you gave episode 10 of season 4 200%. You gave it a
I've got to go watch that now and see what the hell I like so much.
So I think that's probably our top rated episode.
Jesus Christ.
Just really funny because PG and I and Christiana gave that one. It's the children. Christiana gave that a 10 out of 10, but PG and I gave it an 8.5. So we were the curmudgeons. Yeah, that's
200.
funny.
I think that was the one where Joffrey dies at the end, right? Or no?
I was just about to look.
The children, I believe, is when we find out how the others were made.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is that right? I don't know.
Yeah,
Let me
I think
look.
so.
Well, I mean, obviously, lots of things happen. I was kind of thinking that episode 2 of season 4 was when Joffrey dies, but I don't remember. I'm just trying to think what we would have rated so high.
Yeah. So our lowest rated episode, I believe. So that was in season 5, right?
It's got to be that, yeah.
Unbowed, Unbent, Unbroken, which we gave it a 2 out of 10. And that beats anything that we've done elsewhere.
Yeah.
So.
Well, because like even other episodes that had really awful bits had other bits that were at least okay, whereas that episode really had nothing going for it.
I will say I rated The Last of the Starks lower than that episode. I gave that episode a 4 out of 10. I'm sure it was because of other things going on, but I gave Last of the Starks a 1. But I think that would be our next lowest was Last of the Starks. So our lowest rated season. Does anyone want to take a guess there?
Oh, we guessed this one.
Yeah.
Season 8.
Yeah, it's actually a tie between season 5 and season 8. They both.
That was the Ramsey Theon Stanza rape, flailing,
torture
dogs,
porn,
killing babies.
Yeah, I think that one episode has to bring the average down by quite a bit.
That one episode really brings the average down because we had, it was a mix, we had 7.4 for the opening, but most of them were in the 8 or 9s. That really brought it down. And then, but this season, we had some really high scores. We had a 9.4, a 10, and then a 9, and then everything else was 3.8, 6.1, 8.5. It was it that really brought it down.
Yeah.
So I looked up season 4, episode 10, and the storyline from per IMDb is Jon Snow meets Mance, and they discuss a peaceful alternative. Stannis and his army put the wildlings under siege, and Mance surrenders. Jon asks for mercy for Mance to Stannis for the way he was treated. Cersei discloses affair to her father because she's trying to get out of marrying Loras. Tyrion kills Shay in Tywin's bed and then Papa.
Was season 4, episode 10 the one?
That was the highest rated.
Oh, okay. I thought she said
that's
one
the highest
episode.
Rated.
This is the highest rated one.
Yeah.
All right. Well,
Dany learns that her dragon killed a 3-year-old girl. Brienne and Pod meet Arya. Yeah, we really fucking love that.
I just misheard what you said. Which one was the highest? That's all.
So outside the one where they broke the scale, are only 10 out of 10s collectively. Again, this 10 out of 10 comes from Chooch breaking the scale by giving it a 15 out of 10.
Ooh.
And that is season 2, episode 1, The North Remembers. We also gave Blackwater a 10 out of 10. Now only 3 of us rated on that one, but I think that was probably would have been unanimous had we had everyone.
Yeah, that's a pretty great
That
episode.
was a pretty
Mhm.
great episode.
Was I the one that was missing?
You and PG were both missing that week.
Okay.
I can't remember why.
We probably would have balanced out. I don't like war episodes, so he probably would have. I'm sure it would have balanced out.
I will echo that. Like, I really liked that episode, but I will just say, looking back over the whole series, like, the big battle episodes are generally not my favorite. Like, that's
Yeah.
not what I think back on.
Yeah. And then our last 10 out of 10 is A Night of the Seven Kingdoms,
Mm,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
which is a nice way to
Mhm.
remember. Now, it's funny. I used to collect everybody's rating systems. And the way I used to do it is it would link to a Google Plus post, but Google Plus is no longer available.
Wah.
So I only have other people's ratings for this season, but I think their classifiers are interesting. I did not record our classifiers because just I couldn't do that fast enough. But 9 out of 10 worthless fire trenches. 3 out of 10 stale cupcakes and cold Starbucks cups swiped from the writer's table. 5 out of 10 poor battle tactics.
Mm.
Let's see. We've got 6 out of 10 happy little dragon strafes. Dragon fire strafes. I can read, I promise you. +6 better battle tactics and awesome effects scenes. -4 clumsy character twists. Let's see. 6 out of 10 ringing bells. 8 out of 10 stuck landings after flubbing the freestyle routine. And those are just random ratings from our viewers, which I unfortunately I have a lot of like these links that go nowhere.
Alas.
Because we used to keep people's comments as part of our contest, so that's why it went to Google Plus, unfortunately.
Mhm.
We needed a three-eyed raven
Yeah.
to protect our stories.
The thing is, like,
Or perhaps the Wayback Machine.
I think everybody could have told us that it was not the best thing out there, but
Well, it's just one of those things. It's like Google seems like, oh, they're so big. What's going to happen to Google Plus? They apparently just get tired of it, I guess.
same thing that happened to Google Wave. Ooh.
Yeah.
In parentheses, Christiana looks up at the top of the tab where it says Google Hangouts.
Right.
Yes. Yeah, we're still using it.
It's still here, so we're still using it. I mean, they haven't
For
given up on
now.
us yet. Yeah.
Dun dun dun.
So I'm glad that we rated so that I could look back at those things. I don't know if you guys are as much of a stats nerd as I am. I really enjoy being able to see those things because when you're in the moment, it's your emotions that are rating.
Mm-hmm.
And then maybe if you rewatched, you might not rate it exactly the same.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And capturing our feelings in the moment is a big deal. And so like I want to just say thank you, Nutty, for all of the work you did tracking those ratings over the years. It is great to have all of that data, and we have you to thank for that. So thank you.
And I don't remember what made me start tracking them in a document, but we didn't start out tracking them. So I did go back and listen to every episode, get those at one point. Yes. Thank you, Past Nutty, for doing that. But it's been a hell of a ride.
Yeah.
I do want to say that as a show, it's been great. I'm not sure. I can't tell you if I would have really stuck it out without the podcast. There were times that I could have said, do I really want to spend the money for HBO to watch it with everyone else? And I could foresee myself saying, I'll wait till it shows up on Netflix, which it never will.
You can get the discs for it, but
I could have seen myself, waiting or just saying, I don't want to see past the books,
Right.
So definitely the podcast kept me watching the show. And I think that I am probably not alone in saying that the podcast was made the show even better for me because it had that personal component, and it was, I knew I was going to be talking to you guys about it. And this might make some people emotional. I'm sorry. Trigger warning for emotions. I still think after watching an episode what I would say to PG or what I think
Mm.
PG would think about things. And I have these mental conversations in my head all the time. And it's really nice to be able to watch something and think about what your friend might say or what you would say to your friend. So that has made this whole experience very special for me. And I just want to thank all of you for being part of it and for us, continuing with PG's wish and keeping this going. So thank you. And thank you to all of the
Yeah.
listeners. You coming every week made us realize that we weren't just talking to ourselves, and that you cared as well. So thank you.
Yeah, I think switching to the YouTube format and having the videos and having the chat room and everything has added such a huge dimension that I really wasn't expecting at all. That interactive element has added just so much.
Yeah, it was terrifying to add on because it went from being this cozy little bubble of us sitting on Skype talking together, and we knew each other and we knew people might be listening, but when we went YouTube and we were broadcasting our faces for some, I still don't like, that was just still like a really surprising episode. I didn't understand it until like 5 minutes before we went live. Wait a minute, we're gonna be, oh shit.
I remember you
thanks,
saying,
PG.
wait, I have to put lipstick on.
I know. I was like, I gotta have lips. I don't know what I'm gonna say. I gotta at least have lips. No, but
And
yeah.
the first few seasons were edited. And
Yes.
so when we were listening to that episode 0 and episode 1, PG actually bleeped out a couple cuss words and stuff. And we're like, oh, that's so adorable.
He dropped in sound clips from the show and stuff too, right?
Oh yeah, yeah.
Well,
yeah.
From episode 0, he had dropped in clips from the preview. They had shown like a preview of the episode, and he had dropped in, even on episode 0, he had done audio drops. Yeah. It was edited. He put a lot of time into it. Clearly, we don't edit. We just kind of throw stuff out there. But, of all the thank yous, I kind of, I'm like Nutty. I probably would have dropped the subscription around season 5 for a while just to kind of take a moment, take a breath. But, we had made a commitment, and after we lost PG, we decided that, we were going to bring this home for him. And I think we have. And I think one of the things that he said, 2 things that I remember from from episode 0. And one of them was that Germ will kill anybody. So he warned us, episode 0, season 1, he told y'all, sorry if you weren't listening, but everybody was on the table at that point, like was on the menu for being iced. And the other was that he really hoped that it was going to be good, since we were going to have to watch it all, since we committed to do the podcast, And I'm like, so I want to say, actually, thank you to HBO and the showrunners, because they did make it good, because it was tough at points, but we stuck. And yes, for me, a lot of it was because of the commitment to PG and to you guys that we had made. But I really just want to give a thank you to PG, because he's the reason that we're all doing this. He got Chooch and I off our ass, and Nutty and Christiana brought in, and like he set up the station and he set everything up, and it's our love for him and all the silly shit that he did. That we were able to do this. Damn you, Holyfield, indeed. So that's who I wanted to thank, besides Chooch for picking up the mantle and doing all the shit work.
Yeah, definitely.
That was his.
That's another round of applause.
His deal in the beginning was, as long as I don't have to do it, sure, I'll be on it. But we do these things for PG, and we do these things for each other, and it really did end up being a good series. So I'm glad he twisted our arms and got us doing it, because it's been so fun, especially talking with you guys and also the viewers and listeners that have been messaging in since. So
well, and just to echo all of that, I knew you guys before the podcast, but I think I was probably closest to PG when it started. But I've, grown closer to all of you over the years. And, it was something that we all did together and it was wonderful. But then, we lost PG and that was really hard. But it was a great thing that I felt like we could do to continue this and have it be a way to process some of those feelings and to stay close with people we all know that we all loved them, and to just continue on, and just a way to stay close with friends. And it's something I really value and I appreciate. Everyone who's put the time in, stuck with an HBO subscription when they didn't need to, or stuck it out through episodes that weren't as fun to watch for sure. And then, of course, all the people who are joining and watching us live every week, and everyone who listens later. I mean, it's just becomes a little community, and I think that's really special.
And if you want to hear something wild, every now and then Dave Schlusho talks about where he is in Game of Thrones, because he'll watch an episode. I think he's in like season 3. He'll watch an episode and then he'll listen to us.
Oh, bless his pea-picking heart.
So he's like, so I'm listening and my friend is there, and so there's all these emotions going on. But he's always saying how much he likes that he's got a podcast that he knows he can listen to for this thing that he's consuming very slowly.
Yeah.
But and we were friends before, but I think this definitely pulled us much closer.
Chooch.
I'm just gonna say I'm a bit torn now going forward. I had started the first book before we started the series, finished the first book before the first season ended, and then stopped so I'd be fresh to it. So now I'm free to read the books, and I'm kind of like want to wait till they're all done.
Well, whatever.
But I don't know
decide.
that I can wait.
Yeah.
But I know I'm gonna get caught up because of how the traditional pace has been. I'll catch up.
Then again, what I would say about that though is that there are always so many great shows and movies and books and everything that, like, the books are good, but I honestly wouldn't choose to spend the time on it unless that's what you feel like you want to do.
Yeah.
If you're not feeling it, don't make yourself do it.
I think it makes sense for you to wait for the others to come out, just by knowing the way that you consume media.
Right.
I think that's going to be the most satisfying for you to just. And honestly, I never read book 5 because of my migraines and stuff. So I'm now, and then I decide, well, I'll just wait till the series is done. Well, shit, the series is done. And now I have to decide. So I'm kind of where Chooch is. Like, do I read it or do I wait? And I still haven't decided yet. I still don't know if I'm going to read Dance with Dragons, if I'm going to try anytime soon. It's a big goddamn book for somebody that gets migraines every 2 pages.
It is. And I'll tell you both, whatever you decide is fantastic and wonderful. And when or if you do finish, and this is going to answer the Eye of Horus's questions of you guys still going to do the podcast now that the show's over. Any books that you finish, we'll all come back and we'll talk about it with you. And so while this is the end of the series, we could have episodes coming out. So keep that feed in your podcatcher.
Yeah.
And stay, because who knows if Facebook's still going to be here in 5 years.
Yeah. Oh, God, I hope not.
Please,
God, no. Please, baby.
Whenever you change your podcatcher, just keep that in your feed. And when things like that drop, we'll review them. We'll put them out, we'll all get together and we'll talk about it, but don't expect a regular schedule from us.
Yeah.
Maybe if the prequels, the other series come out, maybe we'll see.
Yeah, we ended the City of Heroes podcast 7 years ago, and then boom, we just did a new episode last month. You never know.
Yeah.
So if anybody used to play City of Heroes, It's live again. Message us. We'll tell you about it.
So April O'Neil says your show has made me feel like I have friends in each of you. Aw, April, we love
Aw.
you. And April says, Viv, listen to the books. It's what I did while I worked. Yes, you can listen to the books. I think Roy Dotrice still did the last book. I'm pretty sure he won't be able to do the next one since he's no longer with us. But I'm pretty sure he passed, right?
I
Yeah.
think that's right.
That
Yeah.
happened? Okay.
I appreciate the thought, but I can't do audiobooks either. It's a different problem.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing.
Yeah.
You know, accessibility is hard.
Yeah.
And then the Eye of Horus says, that's good. I'd miss y'all if you didn't put these out. Yeah. And the Eye plays City of Heroes. Yay!
Woo!
Well, and you know, it was mentioned in kind of a joking way earlier, but Chooch and Viv are regular players on the D&D game that I stream Wednesday nights, although after this week it's going to be Tuesday nights.
Yep.
Big schedule change.
But Nutty's actually sounds like she's going to be able to join us for this Wednesday, where we're going to play a one-shot. So if you guys here are going to miss us so much, you could check us out Wednesday streaming on Twitch, and we'll be playing a one-shot, so you won't even have to know the story in advance.
And you can always go back into Christiana's feed and look up old episodes of So Many Levels where I guested in the story. And we also did Curse of Strahd.
Right. Yeah. And all of that is available, both YouTube video and there's the audio podcast version.
Yeah. And you can go to ChristianaEllis.com.
Ding.
Ding.
And the Eye of Horus goes, wow, I watch D&D too. See? April,
don't cross the streams.
April says,
how horrible
I'll
we
be
are
there.
at promotion.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Yeah, no, I love podcasting with all of you. So Chooch said, as long as I don't have to do anything, I'll be on this podcast. And my thing was, as long as I don't have to do it every week forever, I'll do it. Because my schedule is so turbulent that I've never been able to do a regular anything. And that is my big reason for not being on So Many Levels, because I can't.
Well,
I know I'll fail y'all.
Well, we were glad to have you for an extended guest slot, even though tragically you weren't able to be there for the last episode your character was in.
I know.
So we had to have the goodbye episode without you there. But
I know. Well, and you know, that's the thing. Like, as I said, I have a very turbulent lifestyle, and that was, I think I was at work. That was the thing.
It was something where we really couldn't work around it, I don't think.
And that's what happens, you know. It's with my job, I never know. So,
well, all the more though that just illustrates how great it has been that we together have been able to do this show so consistently over the years.
And very rarely, I mean, we have had people not able to make certain recordings, but we almost always have everybody at the beginning, although apparently Christiana wasn't at episode 0. At the beginning episodes and at the finale episodes, and we've had some pretty good consistency. You know, there have been times when I think each of us were not able to make it, but that was the beauty of having 5 people to begin with. Was that if somebody missed out, we still had enough voices. So, and well, I was dedicated to all of you with my turbulent schedule. I do remember a couple of call-ins from a hotel and weirdness there.
Yeah, we've had some interesting backdrops. So
and this, by the way, I have lived in 3 provinces while we've done this.
Wow. Huh?
Yeah, we started when I was in Nova Scotia. I've been working my way west. Started when I was in Nova Scotia. Then I was in New Brunswick, and now I'm in Ontario, and I'm about to move again, but I will still be in Ontario. And I have recorded from 2 countries, so from the US and Canada. And I've recorded also from New York, Wisconsin, New Jersey, and Florida.
Wow.
Yes.
Yeah, we've lived in 3 different states.
States,
We were
yeah.
in Virginia, then Maryland, and now New Mexico.
There
And
was a
And
at
in
least-
addition to those, I've also podcast from Texas
Yeah.
when I've been there. So I've done 4, which I think, Nutty, you still have the record, especially
And
for
I-
the out of country.
International.
Yana
Well,
also was in
I-
2.
I was just gonna say, I think Nutty has more different places, but I did one from South Korea, so
Oh,
You have
yeah.
more yeah. You
And
get
probably
you get extra
Denver, or possibly.
yeah, I think there must have been some over the years, not recently. I think.
Yeah.
Wow.
points. So yeah, no, I
Wow.
mean it's wild, and I love that we've been essentially all over the world, and we've been able to come together.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And nerd out for hours and hours over 1 hour of show.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Gotta
those
talk
first
them
few episodes
thrones.
were 1 hour long.
Yeah, he was
Interestingly
insistent.
enough.
PG was like 1 hour. That's it.
1
Yeah,
hour.
well,
That's all we're gonna spend on this.
slipped
Uh-huh.
a little. Sorry, Ben.
Uh-huh. How many hours did he spend editing it down to get to 1 hour,
Yeah.
though? Because we did talk.
Boy. All right.
We did coin the phrase sex position. That's showed up everywhere else. While other people may have thought it was their idea, we coined that phrase.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And yeah, the fact that apparently there's only one way to have sex on HBO, and that's doggy style. From us.
Dothraki style.
Well, it allows both actors to have their faces to the camera.
yeah. Yeah.
Ugh. I don't care.
Yeah.
On that note,
Yeah.
it sounds like a wrap.
So we have to end on doggy style, really?
Well, actually, we can end on the fact that April says 1 hour was never enough.
Agreed.
Here.
Mhm.
Here, here. All right. Well, thank you one final time to everybody tuning in, chatting in,
Yes, thank you.
listening in, and all of our friends broadcasting here. Yeah, until next time, we will see ya.
Happy Pride.
Yeah,
Happy Pride, yes. Whoa, this thing's flashing for me. I don't know if it's flashed for anybody else.
It was flashing on my end too. I didn't hear the intro music when we started, so I don't
Oh
know.
no. Well,
Me
here comes the
either.
outro. It's in theory, it's playing.
It's strobing.
Viv, don't look at the camera.
I know. It's like, I'll switch to the YouTube stream. Oh no, it's flashing too.
Yeah, we're not hearing the outro.
It's
Voice
just
meter
W
potato.
button. It'll take you right to our page. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons
What a way to
Attribution
go out.
Non-Commercial Share-alike 3.0 Unported license. Feel free to share and remix. Just give us credit and don't charge money for it.
Stroke. Oh no, it does stroke.
Chooch is trying to do a